And we're waiting for one of our,
Speakers, presenters.
oh,
I think Brian's here.
we're
Yeah,
here.
I am here. My apologies.
All good, all good. Very
Alrighty.
super. So we are all set to go if our presenters are ready.
Yes, I believe we are.
Beautiful. Well, feel free to take it away.
Okay, thank you. So welcome everybody. Good morning. Thank you so much for showing up for our presentation. I am Maureen Larsen, Director of Academic Technology at Orange County Community College in Middletown, New York. And I'm joined with Brian Cepuran, who is the Vice President of D2L Labs at the D2L Corporation. And our presentation is on AI as an assistant. So this is part of the series that the FACT2 has presented for AI. The first workshop was getting started with AI. Second was potential pitfalls of AI use in the classroom. The third was developing syllabus statements for AI use. Today, you are here, AI as an assistant. We're going to try to focus on the helpful ways to use AI. And the fifth presentation is going to be AI tools to help you build your course. And all presentations are recorded and shared. So if you missed any, please catch up on the recordings. So we're going to take a look at AI from several different perspectives and why it's important. The focus and the buzz on AI, at least in academic circles, has been on prevention, right? Faculty talk about how can I keep my students from using this? How can I catch them using it? And we understand those concerns, but we also want to look at the benefits of using AI. Our students, AI is part of their world today. It's going to be a greater part of their world in the future. And it's important that we provide them with the experience and some guidance on using AI to help them understand course materials, help them when they're stuck, if they can't reach a human tutor, if they can't speak to you as an instructor. And we also want to focus on how to use it ethically and responsibly. We have a quote here from Ethan Mollick, who is a professor at the Wharton School of University of Pennsylvania, and he's a big proponent of AI. He's got lots of videos out there, very helpful ones for faculty. And he said, right, large language models are some of the most powerful software applications ever created, but no one really knows how to use them best. And there's precious little in the way of documentation, which you'll find is very true. But you just need to use them to figure it out. You do have to practice to learn the best ways to come up with, how AI can be helpful to you. So we really encourage you to do that.
If we look at things from a job market perspective, there's a lot of a lot of research that's being done. We see here this is an infographic that's been released by Statista based on some information, some data from Accenture, and it's looking at how time that's being spent in various roles across various industries, like how much of that time can be has a high potential for automation as well, a high potential for augmentation, and as well as there's low potential for automation or augmentation. And we see, and if we focus on those first two categories, so this is the idea of like time that people are spending today that can be fully automated, or that time where their efforts, where a human's efforts can be augmented by AI. That would be the green bar and the yellow bar. You see that there is quite an impact across many different industries. So what we see is that the roles that are out there are changing, and they're changing in a way that requires them to use AI in order to be successful. And if for those students that are at your campuses today and tomorrow, they're also going to need to be able to adapt and be prepared to live in a work where AI is a part of their day-to-day operations, right? If we look at some of the most highly impacted industries, in banking or in insurance, we're seeing, there's a thought that perhaps up to 60% of their time of the time that's being spent today will be impacted by automation. And I think that this sort of information is important to also share with your students. Make sure that they're aware that not only is AI out there, but it is something that they will absolutely be encountering, and something they need to be prepared for as they enter into that workforce. We also kind of wanted to share our thoughts on why this is important from a technology perspective as we move on to the next slide. We can see that one of the things that is true, and I think part of the reason why there is a lot of why it's very anxiety inducing, is that there are tools out there that are very easy to use, and they can be very helpful for many different tasks, right? And so I'm sure most of you would be familiar with some of the options that are out there, like Microsoft Copilot. Microsoft is adding it to lots of their systems, and not really giving an option to not use it. Google Gemini has been making a splash recently in terms of what it's able to do. I think Anthropic Claude, Open is another one that's they've taken a slightly different approach around how they source their information and how the models are built. And then of course there's the ChatGPT from OpenAI, something that is probably one of the best known options out there. Another fact is that the AI cat is out of the bag. There are a number of models that are now available as open source. A lot of this started in the sort of the text generation with the release of the Llama 2 large language model by Meta. Previous to that, there had been Stable Diffusion for images had been released as open source. And what that means is that not only are there some big companies and startups and things that are offering these services and these capabilities to people, but anyone and everyone can be using these models however they see fit. There's an interesting article that I saw where someone had one of the smaller Llama 2 models running on a Raspberry Pi, and sort of like it wasn't running well, but once it's in the hands of people that are trying to do creative things, it's going to find its way into more and more things. Which leads me to sort of the third bullet point here, is that AI is becoming ubiquitous. It's something that is becoming more and more difficult, and it soon will be impossible to avoid. We think about the different products that's being integrated into our mobile phones, into our smart appliances. Alexa and Siri were early entrants into that market, and they're only those types of things will only get better and more available. Our cars are incorporating the same thing. As well as there's a whole new class of wearables that are being innovated on by startups that might change our relationship with our mobile phones and our other devices. To Dean's point, yes, you can. You can do lots of. You can run these engines on your laptops if you want. It's certainly not a problem. When we think about the software we use, day to day, we see that AI is being added in. Microsoft has incorporated it across the Office suite. Adobe is incorporating it into a lot of their products, and every company is looking at how they're going to incorporate generative AI into their products. The browsers are changing. So for those of you that use Microsoft Edge, Copilot is integrated directly into the browser. And we're also seeing it in games as well, just sort of allowing for more human-like interactions. It's also being incorporated into the services we interact with day in, day out. There's a plethora of customer service bots and various assistants that can help you do many different tasks. When we look at the generative AI landscape, it's there's a lot of areas that generative AI is being applied to, and one way that it is being categorized, and this is the infographic on the left is from Sequoia Capital, and they've broken it down into sort of like the high level type of interaction, and then they highlight some of the different use cases within that. So one of the large ones there in the top left is around text. So this is a generative AI that's able to generate text for people, and there are specific targets of using it for marketing, for sales, for support, or for writing in general. There's video and animation, so they kind of have that in the video and 3D boxes, allowing for greater degrees of personalization, for automation. If you think back to the recent Hollywood strike, there's a big thing around, how will generative AI, how can generative AI be used in the movie and TV industries? There's generative AI can be applied to images, and those might be applied to things like marketing, to design, to just generating images for people. We will be sharing a copy of the deck after the session for sure. There's a separate thing that's looking at code, being able to generate code, being able to document it, and I think there will be an increase in the number of sites where you can create applications without having to code yourself. There's also cases where it's being used for speech, for voice synthesis, for automation. The infographic on the right is a different way to look at sort of the same idea, and this is really focused on content creation. And here they focus in on sort of 4 specific areas, looking at text, looking at audio, looking at video, and looking at graphics. And you see that there are a lot of players that are doing different things in this space. The topic that we're going to focus on in today's presentations, if we go to the next slide, we have, we're going to focus on the prompt to text systems. So this is that chat GPT kind of place. And these are models where you provide a prompt, which is how you interact with the model, and it will respond with a text response. Now, I think it's important for those that don't know, getting a little bit of detail about exactly how they work. So ChatGPT, right? That GPT portion of the name is actually an acronym. It's talking about a specific model called a generative pre-trained transformer. And what it's a system that's been trained on a very large amount of text. And what it's able to do is it's able to predict what a useful next bit of text might be in its response. So I think that there's a misconception for some that they think that this is like a smart system. It's not really a smart system. It's just good at being able to predict that next little bit of text. So for the example I give here is if you were to type in, the capital of the state of New York is, it might respond with the 3 bits of text, Albany. It doesn't know what Albany is. It just knows that based on what it's been trained on, that is a meaningful and easy, appropriate response to the beginning of the prompt. Now, one of the things that's important to also recognize is that these systems today, they sometimes respond with erroneous information. The term that's been coined for this is a hallucination. And I think one of the things that can be entertaining / frustrating is that these systems will make mistakes and be 100% confident that it is absolutely correct, which it is not. So it's just something that there's techniques that we'll discuss later on how you can manage that. I thought it might be also helpful just to think about where generative AI fits into the overall AI landscape, because there's lots of work happening outside of this space, and they're all doing amazing and meaningful things. And each of those, so like we're talking about the one particular bubble here, that is generative AI. And you can see that there are many other categories of work that's happening in the world today that will have there is interactions between them. And I think we'll continue to see some really cool things over time. If we look at the next slide, is really, I think an important question that people want to know is, which prompt to text tool is best? That's not an easy question to answer. There are a number of different factors, and here we've got a few that we wanted to highlight. So the first is cost. So there are free options out there, or free-ish. It may be included with a license you already have, or it may be that there's a freemium model where there's some capabilities you can use for free, and then they're going to try to convince you to pay for more capabilities or more offerings. And ChatGPT has their plus or their subscription model, where it's like you can use it for free, but you can do more if you pay for it. Availability is another factor that obviously can be very important. Is it where you need it to be? I had mentioned before that AI is getting incorporated into a lot of different things. There's value and usefulness in having those things be available to where you want it to be. There are different tasks that are better accomplished by different like the different models. So that could be one task could be summarizing a document or summarizing content. One could be for question and answer. It could be for generating images, as I mentioned, and you'll find that certain models will work better for some of those tasks than others. And unfortunately, there is a lot of information that we'll talk about, how they relate to each other, but really, a lot of it's going to come down to your experience with them. You do have to try them. You do have to see how well they're working, how well they're not working. What is it doing well? What is it not? And then using that to guide your as part of your decision making process. There can be differences in terms of the subject matter area that they cover. So, there are models that are geared towards helping people that are doing coding. Very tailored to specifically, even to a point of they're better at certain programming languages than others. All of these things can factor into it. And another piece is this notion of creativity, and that's something that it's a bit of a euphemism. It's really just giving the model a chance to kind of go down paths that are less likely than others, or than the most likely ones. And what you can find is that it will provide what seem like more creative answers, like or may give you ideas beyond sort of a standard approach. And you can see that we've got pictured there from Microsoft Edge the option they give for Copilot, where you can ask it to be more creative, more balanced, or more precise. So to your point, Peter, there are lots of articles that have been written that classify various tools on many different criteria, including there are ones that are about learning outcomes. I don't have any handy. But I mean, if you look at, I believe we have it in the resources at the bottom, Ethan Mollick's blog, he has a lot of tools around, he has a different ideas around how to apply it in a pedagogical perspective. So one of the questions that we wanted to hear from those on the workshop today is, what AI tools have you worked with? If you could share that in the chat, that'd be great. Generating presentations based on an outline. Very good. Lots of chat GPT, and we got some Photoshop. Oh, this is great to see. Not surprising, ChatGPT being a very common one.
Yeah. If you have not at all worked with any AI, post that as well. If you've used none, haven't tried it at all yet, that would be interesting to see. Okay, we do have a few that haven't tried it at all. Okay, none yet. So we're hoping that the outcome of this presentation will encourage everybody to at least give it a try. Yep. Okay.
So interesting. With Grammarly, there are. I think they are progressing into AI. I know with Microsoft Office, um, I happen to use the Outlook web client, and it'll give me text predictions, kind of finishing off my whole sentence. So clearly, they're going beyond just checking for my grammar and spelling, and they're predicting what I might be wanting to write in my emails. Thank you, Barbara.
All right. Ready to move to the next slide, Brian?
I think so.
Okay. Oops. All right. So now let's get on to how AI can help students. Did we? Oh my God, a little out of place here. So we know that AI is out there in many, many different ways. Most of us have tried like the ChatGPT, there's Grammarly, those built-in types of things. But there are some creative ways that AI can help students that you might not have thought of. So language translation is one example where AI can be very helpful for your students. You can actually have the students tell AI to speak to them in a new language. And I had one of my interns who is third year, I think, Chinese, and he didn't even know that AI could do any of this. So he started asking it to quiz him in Chinese and then have him respond correctly. And it was giving him the correct responses and correcting him when he was wrong. And he was very impressed with how that would work. So if your students are trying to learn a language, it can be extremely helpful to sort of quiz them and coach them and give them some extra support for language translation. It can summarize topics. So some of my students have used it. You can, depending on the model or tool that you're using, you can upload, for instance, a paper and have it summarize. If you have the paid version of ChatGPT, GPT-4, that does have access to the internet. So you can tell it to summarize, Great Expectations or the main points. Now, of course, if that's the question you're asking your students to do, you wouldn't want them to do that, but they can get a different idea or explain to me something in a different viewpoint. Concepts, theories, etc. You can ask AI to explain this to you and just check your understanding of it and then use follow-up questions. So we can encourage our students to use it sort of as a coach, an academic coach. It's definitely a way to cure blank page syndrome. You can say, give me 3 controversial topics on global warming. Give me 3 points of view on global warming from an environmentalist perspective, from a businessman's perspective. And it can generate these ideas, not that your students will take that idea to write, but it gets them thinking. So sometimes it can just unstick the gears and give you prompts that can help you, encourage you to write differently. It can convert text to speech. So one of my other students had it read out loud to him. We were using Pi, which has a voice component to it. So Pi, he chose a voice, and then Pi read something to him, which he liked that because he doesn't want to read himself. It can provide stress reduction exercises for your students. If your students have a lot of test anxiety, you can tell AI to talk me through guided meditation on relaxing before an exam. The ones that have a voice, it can speak to you. So this is really helpful for you too, if you like, but it's really good for students. A fun way to use it is to have it debate opposing points. So have your students choose a position and have AI argue back with you so they can test their own debate skills. A tutor for statistics. Yep, that's great. Creating draft versions, create me a draft of, right? And this is, I think, one of the most used ways of it by faculty, students, whoever, right? Give me a draft email for this particular thing. Give me a draft letter, etc. It can review and provide feedback on submissions. So your students could finish writing their paper, submit it, and say, review this for me. Here's my main points. Am I hitting those main points? Where can I improve this? How can I make this better? 24/7 tutor, AI is there at 2 or 3 in the morning for your distance learning students if nobody else is, right? But we need to guide the students on the best ways to use AI. So one of the examples that I had was I had my students just start playing around with AI with no guidance. just ask it questions and see what you get. And it was a very lackluster response from them. Then I provided them a prompt, which we're going to share with you in a little bit, and it was much more productive. And they were sort of learning the best ways to make this tool respond in a helpful way for them. So we have a couple of comments here. Yes, online students, this is really, really beneficial for students, especially when faculty learn how to use the tool and provide that guidance for students, helping students conduct more efficient database searches. Yep. So really, really great uses for your students. However, as Brian mentioned before too, it can hallucinate, it can respond in making statements that are not true. So we need to have our students learn how to check for the authenticity of the responses as well. So in using all of these tools, right, the mechanics of creating the prompt, that's the most helpful thing. So we need to learn how to construct a helpful prompt, add details, context, specifics. We'll go through this in a minute. And that was the way to really make it be more helpful. So my students were really pleased when we went through this exercise with them.
Now, I wanted to kind of take you through sort of a bit of an evolution of prompts, because it's sort of it's a progression that people will go through as they start to use some of these tools. So they will start out with a simple prompt. I call it a bit of a bad prompt. So this is myself, perhaps, how should I prepare for a marathon? If I do this, I will get a response. It'll be very generic. It will be something that you can find on many websites that tell you how to, gear up for running for a marathon. Now, I can also, add a little bit more context, a little bit more information about myself, and we can get better results. So if we look at, if we could click Maureen to trigger the animation, by providing some context. So I'm a beginner runner in my 40s. I am relatively fit, but have limited experience with longer distance runs. Please provide a plan that is tailored to my situation that would give me the best chance of success of completing my first marathon in 6 months while minimizing risk of injury. So it can then take that additional information and tailor its response to really what I'm more interested in. I'm not, in the first statement, I'm just looking, it'll help me how to complete a marathon. But if I want to factor in the fact that, I'm older, I'm at higher risk of injury, these are things that it can also tailor into its response. And on the next slide, we break down some of the different components of how to construct your prompts, right? So the first thing is to provide context or examples. Some of the language that they use in the realm of prompt engineering, which is sort of it's becoming more formalized as an approach to prompting. The idea of zero shot, one shot, or few shot. And really what that means is, are you providing examples of what you want? So if you're looking for questions and answers, if you provided some examples of good questions and good answers, it will give you a better result. One of the things that we found in our exploration is that if you're able to provide those examples, you can make use of some of the cheaper models and get results that are more like the more expensive ones. So you can use ChatGPT 3.5 if you provide examples and get results that are much closer to what you get from GPT-4 without providing those examples. You want to be specific and you want to be clear. I found an interesting website that is actually it was a document from Anthropic on how to use Claude. And they gave the example of, is your prompt clear? Show your prompt to a colleague and ask them if they can follow the instructions themselves and produce the exact result you're looking for. If they can't, then the odds are that the large language model is also not going to be able to respond in exactly the way that you want. Using appropriate grammar. And so that means using grammar that's aligned with your targeted audience. And the reason why this is important, so if you go back to how I mentioned how these generative pre-trained transformers work, is that they're trained on a bunch of content and they find a path through that based on what you've written. If you include grammar, informal language and that sort of thing, it will it will use that and assume that's the kind of response that you want. So if you want something that's going to be appropriate for a business setting, you want to use language in your prompt that's similar. One of the interesting things that researchers have found is that if you're supportive, that can have a positive impact. And by that, I mean like literally add in, take a deep breath, and think through this before you continue. They've shown that it does have a meaningful impact. It can be very helpful to define the role and the goal that you want the large language model to play. So that could be that you want it to play the role of a tutor, of a teacher, of a content creator, and that will give it a context for how it will respond. You want to define the rules that you want it to follow. So you want to be clear on what you want it to do, and if there are things that it must do, you want to make sure that those are called out specifically. One example of that is if you want the output to be in a specific format, you really want to call that out. It's also very helpful to provide constraints. If there are things that you don't want it to do, but if you make that explicit in your prompt, it does a much better job of not doing it. So if you don't want it to, tell you if you wanted to tell you its thought process, or the how it got to its answer, it can provide that. But if you don't want it to tell you that, then you can also tell it not to. You want to add personalization. So in the prompt that Maureen will go through in a minute, there's added into the prompt is ideas on how you want it to respond to the user. There are advanced techniques that you can use. So with things like chain of thought or retrieval augmented generation, you're giving it you're having it do things a little bit differently. So with chain of thought, you can tell it to think out loud. You can have it create a summary of what it thinks you're asking, and then use that as the next step. With retrieval augmented generation, you can tailor it to specific things. So like, let's say a student wanted to summarize a topic in their course. They can get a summary of that specific topic, not just that concept that might be captured in the large language model at large. You can adjust the creativity, as I mentioned earlier, based on the interface that you're using to interact with these models. And there are also strategies that you can use to limit hallucinations. So there are options for things that you can tell it to, if it doesn't know the answer, to say I don't know, as opposed to leaving it open for how it should respond, which is where those hallucinations happen. Now, when we had a couple of, we had a very basic prompt, we had a more advanced prompt. The next step can be really eye-opening. And Maureen, if you want to, why don't you show us this great prompt from Ethan Mollick?
Okay. So here is, through our evolution of a prompt, the better prompt still. So this is a very text-heavy slide, but I do want to read it to you, and we'll sort of break down the different parts of this prompt. So this is the one I did provide to my students to use. So you can see, to set the role and the goal, it starts by saying you're an upbeat, encouraging tutor who helps students understand concepts by explaining ideas and asking students questions. So that sort of sets what we want the AI to be. You're going to act as this. Then, step by step, right? We tell it, start by introducing yourself to the student as their AI tutor who's happy to help them with questions. Next, we put a constraint here. Only ask one question at a time. And without that, AI might use too many questions at once, which I've experienced that many times, right? Then we sort of set the personalization. Ask them what they would like to learn about, ask them about their learning level, are you a high school student, etc. Just sort of be chatty, right? Also in here, we've interspersed, again, step-by-step instructions, right? Wait for the response, then ask this, then wait for a response. Then we get to the pedagogical part of this prompt, right? We're giving this really the base on how we want this to respond to students. Given this information, help students understand the topic by providing explanations, examples, and analogies. These should be tailored to the student's learning level and prior knowledge, so it's using that information they got from the student or what they already know about the topic. Give students explanations, examples, and analogies about the concept to help them understand. You should guide students in an open-ended way. Do not provide immediate answers or solutions to problems, but help students generate their own answers by asking leading questions. Ask students to explain their thinking. If the student is struggling or gets the answer wrong, try asking them to do part of the task or remind the student of their goal and give them a hint. If students improve, then praise them and show excitement. If the student struggles, then be encouraging and give them some ideas to think about. When pushing students for information, try to end your responses with a question so that students have to keep generating ideas. Once a student shows an appropriate level of understanding, given their learning level, ask them to explain the concept in their own words, and this is the best way to show you know something, or ask them for examples, right? So that sets the whole way that this AI is going to help this student learn this particular item, right? And then when a student demonstrates, they know the concept, you can move to the conversation to a close. This is our final step-by-step, and tell them you're here to help them if they have further questions. So there's a lot to this, but we're going to be including the slides so you can copy and paste this, and we have links to Ethan's blog where this came from. So this is the prompt when I gave this to my students and they tried this compared to what they were using in the first place. They were extremely surprised at how well this worked. So Lori is saying this assumes AI knows the right answers. It will draw upon misinformation, but in general, we found that this was getting the right answers. Also, AI is instructed here, right, not to give students answers, to just keep prompting them to look up more information. AI can give them a hint or whatever. So I encourage you guys to really try this and see the types of responses that you get from this. Now, there's a whole lot here, right? Setting the stage, sort of. So a shortcut for setting the stage is that you can customize ChatGPT, right? If you have a ChatGPT account. So we do have some AI that you can use without creating an account. But for ChatGPT, you have to have an account. And if you do, you can go to the lower left where your name is and click on your name, and you'll see this little options and choose Customize ChatGPT. You'll get these little custom instructions, and then you have two boxes. So you can set custom instructions and sort of create your template like what we had on the evolution of a prompt and paste that into these boxes and then save. And ChatGPT will remember this and then will always respond with those instructions, sort of setting that role for it every time you converse with it. And so another thing that you can do is sort of create a set of different ways that you want ChatGPT to respond. So you might say, you know, you're a financial analyst. Of course, we never recommend going to AI for financial information, but this is just an example. So you could set that it's a financial analyst and how it should respond. And then maybe you're a sports expert and you should know all the stats from the sports teams and you're going to respond in this way. So you can create sort of these boilerplate templates and save them in a Word document, save them in a spreadsheet, save them in a Google Doc, and then you could come in and just copy and paste into the customized ChatGPT fields as you need and play around with ChatGPT that way. Yeah, so Roberta says she didn't know about the option. So these are the ways that we found that can really customize this tool and help it to be much more focused in the responses that it gives us. If you don't have ChatGPT and you're using another AI, you can then just sort of use this prompt and set up that prompt in a document and then copy and paste as part of the beginning of the prompt. I did play around with this with Perplexity AI, and it was not as good at accepting these instructions as ChatGPT was. Pi as an AI was pretty good at it as well, but you have to test all these things with all the different tools that you're using. Okay. So here Peter's saying engage students, ask them to use AI research about which they're already deeply engaged. Yep. Oh, definitely. So I ask my students all the time to show me where it fails, because I had my interns, they're all computer science students, play around with this, and because I wanted to find out where like the epic failures were. And math was their main one, which they said it was almost useless with math. Okay, so when we're going to definitely, hopefully share this information with our students, right? We want to play around with this a little bit ourselves and then show our students, here is how you use this as a tool, right? Not give me a research paper, right? Which we think some of them are doing, but show the students, here's how you use it to help you understand something, right? So you as an instructor should test different prompts, use what we have here and sort of build and start playing around with prompts. And we have lots of resources at the end of the presentation, links to sites where you can get some practice prompts to use. Then you should provide examples to your students and talk about context, all the different things that we spoke already and how they should use this. Then we recommend create one prompt template similar to what we have here, or you could use the one from Ethan Mollick and give that to your students. And then, like what I'm doing with my interns, right? Have the students play with that and start creating their own custom prompts and see what the results are. And then maybe as a group in class, collaborate, have the students collaborate on who used what and how they got the best results for using AI to help them with concepts that you know are already difficult or real sticking points in your class with your students. So would like you to just respond, right? Have you used, have you used AI, or how else could you help students, right? With AI, any ideas if you guys want to share? And some people are sharing a couple of them already, right? Somebody said Ed Puzzle. Also for the neurodiverse students. So we have a Bridges program here at SUNY Orange where we have different neurodiverse students, and I've shown some of them about AI and how to use it. And some of them were very skeptical. Many of my students have been a little skeptical about this. All right, so Celeste says, are we instructing students on how to better use AI to write students' essays? And one of the things that I talk to my students about with AI or any type of tools that is out there, right? So AI might be the latest, greatest way to cheat, but students have had many, many ways to cheat over all the years. And I always talk to them about knowledge and the value of knowledge, right? So if you hand me a paper that was done by AI and AI gets the A, you lose. So who's really the winner? And we have that conversation quite a bit because I want them to understand that all of these things can help you be the smarter person, the more successful, the more knowledgeable. If you let AI do this for you, you don't progress at all. And what are you going to do when you leave college and you know, how are you going to deal with these skills on the job force? Really tell your students that this is a helpful technology for them. And, you know, just really, I just discourage them from using it in a way that's not ethical, where that ethical conversation comes in, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. That's great.
One question that comes to mind, there's been a few comments around the need for critical thinking, the need to validate the responses. Is it a different case than, you know, what's been the situation, you know, with Google, with Wikipedia, where there's information out there and the quality and the veracity of it isn't, you know, is sort of implied, but it needs that validation. Are these large language models just making that, adding more into that same mix, or is it really different than what is there in the past?
All right. Not sure how we are on time, but I want to move forward. So we've focused on how AI can help your students. Now, how can AI help you as a faculty member? Well, there's lots of ways that AI can help faculty. It can help you draft an outline of your lecture. It can help draft quiz questions. You can ask AI, what's another way that I can ask this question? What are, you know, you could share if you felt comfortable doing it, you could upload, say, your lecture outline, say, what points didn't I include here? What am I missing? What are some, you know, engaging questions I could ask my students that I have not yet included here? it's great for generating ice-breaking ideas. If you teach online, we know that icebreaker discussion is one of the most important things, but in the class too. So ask it for some great ice-breaking questions. You'll really be entertained by those. Group work suggestions. It's great in giving you an outline for preparing for a difficult conversation. If you sort of set the stage with some instructions and say, I have a student and here's the situation, and I've spoken to him before, I'm going to have to speak to him again, and, you know, give me some different points that I can bring up. You can ask AI how you can engage students in discussions on, you know, whether or not it's ethical to use AI to submit their work. It will surprise you with some of the information that it shares. Drafting agendas this is some of the business use cases that have been out there for quite a while, right? Research assistance, as somebody already mentioned. Rubric creation, it can give you rubrics. So these are some ways that are really helpful. Okay, and then so in the chat, right, if you've used an AI tool to help you with faculty tasks, please share that, and people are sharing some of these things. Yeah, so I know in my class, I assigned AI, it had over a year ago with ChatGPT with the first buzz, and I said, I want you guys to try this. And I literally had about 5 students that would not touch it at all. They were terrified of it, and other students weren't sure. So even some of my computer science students had not used it at all, and I was very surprised. But I'm like, you need to try this out and see what it is, because in their jobs, we already know just on the job side, as Brian mentioned too, it's a skill that they're going to be expected to use. So how is this beneficial to your employer, right? They're going to have to know how to use this as a tool the same way you have to know how to use the internet or computers, right? So here's another example of a prompt. There's a Microsoft example, and we included this link as well. So many examples on how to create prompts. But we know just from the research that we've done that there is actually a successful recipe to follow for prompts. And so that's what we hope that you get out of this, so that you can play with it yourself and share it with your students, so everybody gets more used to the ways that we can use this as a tool for good to help students advance their knowledge in the classes. All right, so starting today, right, what can you do? Start using AI. So several of them, you know, I know sometimes people don't want to share their own information. My students, many of them didn't want to create an account. So you can try, there's one called pi.ai, which is supposed to be the empathetic, personal AI. If you haven't seen it, you have to give it a try. It also has a voice that can speak to you in any sort of accent that you'd like to choose. And you can try Perplexity. No sign-on required for that one as well. As Brian mentioned, right, if you open up Edge, you've got Copilot that's on the side there, and that's actually ChatGPT 4. It will also generate images, which the other ones are text-based. The image generators we didn't talk about today, but you can play around with that and see what you think. Practice with some prompts and start building your prompt templates. And then make sure that you're checking for accuracy, and sort of make a list of the ways that you're checking for accuracy, because we want to share that with students as well as part of the lesson. And then I would encourage you to do an AI lesson, make it a topic. Right here, we're going to talk about today AI and how it affects all of this. Make sure that you're bringing that into your classes. There's a note also from Brian. You want to speak a little bit about the growth mindset?
So I have 2 little girls, and one of the things we talk about a lot is the idea of growth mindset. From Dr. Carol Dweck. The idea is that, you know, the idea of, you know, the more you practice something, the better you get. And just because it doesn't work out one time or a few times doesn't mean that it can't be helpful. You just have to practice more and figure out how to make it work well for you and your students.
All right. So one thing that they've asked us to remind everybody is the CIT conference in May at the University of Buffalo. There's going to be an AI symposium before CIT conference. And I believe if you attend virtually, it's free. Or if you go up to Buffalo for this, there was a fee for lunch. I think it was $30, but I'd have to be corrected. But there's the link there. So please join on that day, and lots more great AI information. Okay, so now we'd just like to open it up to any questions that anybody had. Oh, great. Thank you, Stephanie. So $30 for in-person attendance, which covers the cost of the lunch. Yep. And drop the link in the chat. I shall try to do that. Oh, thank you. All right, so any other questions? No? All right, well, I know we're ending a little bit early, but I hope this was useful. And again, it's been recorded and the slides will be shared. And we hope that we've encouraged you all to give this a try if you have not yet.
Great job. Thank you both.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Have a great day.
Take care.
Thank you.
There was a question in the chat regarding where the previous and current webinar recordings will be hosted. I will send that link out. It is listed both on the registration website for the FACT2 AI faculty development workshops, and it is also hosted on the SUNY CPD playlist, and those links go out to all registrants. So
Thank you.
watch your email, coming soon.